Hey everybody, it is Sunday evening and I think it's about time we take another trip around the world. So we're going to start here at my 29 Miscellaneous like we always do, and as is usually the case, there's not a lot to talk about with this tank either. I did a water change about a week ago. It probably needs another one. I guess it's probably been longer than that, maybe 2 weeks now, judging by how much water we've lost. You can see how low it is from the top there. That's usually my gauge, how long it's been since I've done a water change. I don't lose a ton of water out of this tank. It is covered, but it does evaporate out of the tank eventually, as it does all tanks. And I usually top it off maybe once between water changes, and that's about it. So it's probably due for a top off rather than an actual water change. But I did just change the filters recently. I shot a little video about that where we talked about the biosponge, and this was the tank I used as an example because the biosponge in this tank always gets clogged very quickly for some reason. Other than that, not much to talk about. Everybody is doing well and looking good. That is assuming I get a look at my Bolivian ram. There it is. I was going to say, haven't seen that one yet here in the video. But now that I have, I'm not too worried about it. On a little side note, my Bolivian ram in my office tank still looks a little thin. And this one doesn't really look like it's packing on the weight, but it does look a lot better and fuller than the one that's in my office tank. So I'm guessing that the API General Cure that I tried on it did not work, and so I have ordered another medication that has been recommended to me. I cannot think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's not coming from Amazon Prime. It's coming from some outside seller, third-party seller through Amazon, and it's going to take about another week to 10 days to get here. So hopefully my Bolivian ram that's in my office tank will still be with us when the medication arrives. But that's really got nothing to do with this tank or this video. Just a little side note to give us a few moments to look at my 29, since there's nothing really ever going on in it. My 55-gallon Gourami tank still, to me, looks like a sad affair. It's all sparse and spindly. This used to be all thick and green and lush, and you could barely even see into it. It had so many plants growing into it, which is kind of how I like it. It's a fine balance between letting enough light get to the bottom and actually being able to see and enjoy the fish versus, you know, that lush green growth that I like so much. So when I got in there recently, I really just, you know, cleared the vegetation out and really opened the tank up. I've been struggling to get on top of this hair algae I've got in here. I have been getting on top of it, but it's been a slow process, and it's involved getting some fish in there that are actually helping me eat it, like this snakeskin gourami, for example. You can see he's pecking away at it right now. So that's good. The bad thing is I lost my chocolate gourami, and then of course the the plants and everything make it look so dismal and sparse in here. It's just kind of sad all the way around. Not exactly sure why I lost my chocolate gourami. It could be for a couple of reasons. They're kind of finicky fish. They like a stable environment. They don't like boisterous tank mates. They don't like a lot of water flow and vigorous current. And I gave it all of that at once. I used to have a 1,500 gallon per hour power head in this tank, and the vegetation was so thick that it really diffused the water flow, and you just couldn't tell that I had that much water moving around the tank. So when I cleared out a lot of the vegetation and really opened the tank up, I just left that big power head running, and after a week or so, I kind of got to scratching my head, is that maybe not a good idea? And so I shut it off. It looked like the fish were really struggling to just kind of hold position in the vigorous current. I noticed the gouramis were just sitting up in the top corners. So I did stress the gourami for quite a while under those circumstances. And then I also put that big snakeskin gourami in there. And the snakeskin gouramis are not aggressive per se, but they will be a little bit boisterous. They can be skittish. They dart and dash. They need a lot of room. They get pretty big. So eventually that's probably going to outgrow this 55 anyway. So what I'm considering now, whether this had anything to do with my chocolate gourami's death or not, I'm thinking about just removing this snakeskin here and putting it in my 125 gallon tank with my African themed fish And then that will open this tank up to allow me to get some more docile gouramis in here. Maybe I can get a little group of those chocolate gouramis or something. I don't know. But I don't want to get any more chocolate gouramis in here while I've still got this snake skin, because I just don't think it's, going to be a good idea to do that. So that's all I can really think about that's going on in this tank. If you hadn't noticed him, my big old striped Raphael still just lying down there in his little cave. Big cave, whatever you want to call that. So moving on to my 55-gallon Tbar tank. Tbar being the fish down there in the bottom. Not much going on in here either. You can kind of see my big Pleco likes to hang out in my Anubias there. That's its front lip. And then its tail is actually all the way up there sticking out in the back. So I recently had this fish identified for me by one of my viewers. I shot a video about it. If you look on this tank's playlist, the Tbar tank's playlist, you'll see a video not too long ago where I talked about that and described it. I did look up the name of the fish in that video. I'm not going to do that for this one because I can't even remember what it was called, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. But in that video, I discussed the differences between that one and the one that is in my native tank, and I said I think they're different fish. But the more I've looked at them, the longer I've had a chance to compare the two, I actually don't think they're different fish. I just think they're subtly different morphs of the same fish. Just color variants, not even morphs really, just color variants of the same fish. Other than that, not really a lot that I can think of. I do need to get in here, as always, and do a water change. This tank pretty much always needs a water change. My Anubias, where I cut it, because remember, I always do sell my aquarium plants. Check my email down below if you're interested. I always have something for sale. But you can see these little leaves. I recently cut this top section of that rhizome off, and so I'm starting to get some smaller, more compact growth going on right there. This rhizome will be cut off down here pretty soon because it's getting pretty big. You can see new root growth generating right there, and you can even see new plant growth right here, that little stalk coming up. I've also got another flower stalk coming up right here. So I'll need to get in there and do a little bit of maintenance on that. You can see one of my Siamese algae eaters in there. So I really like my Siamese algae eaters. They do a wonderful job at helping to keep this tank clean. Of course, I do have other maintenance type fish, including that very large Pleco. So this tank stays fairly clean. Moving on to my, hopefully I'm not going to scare that Pleco because he's actually out right now. Actually, let's do something a little different. We're going to skip this tank for half a moment, and we're going to have a look at this Pleco. Now, this is the one that I said I thought was a different species than the other one, and one of the main reasons was, if you'll notice these sort of lighter highlights, these little markings around here, I've never really noticed them on this fish before, and that is very indicative of the species of fish that was identified for me. Also, the tail having these little sort of dots and then that curl was very indicative of it as well, and I've never really noticed that so pronounced either, and now I do. So I'm not sure why it never seemed the same to me, but now that it's out and in full view, I look at it and it looks completely the same to me. I think the common name, one of the common names, was gold spot Pleco, but I'm not 100% sure on that either, so don't quote me. So we'll get back to this tank in just a minute. All the poor sunfish think they're getting ready to get their dinner. So this is my 40 breeder, formerly my black ghost knife fish tank. And I'm about to add my Siamese algae eaters to this tank. I've already moved my female Panda Molly out of my quarantine tank. I mean, not my quarantine tank. I had it in my 20-gallon Angelfish tank. And I'd always complained about how skittish it was and how it never really came out. And I always thought that was odd for a Molly. Any kind of live bear is usually a very outgoing, easy temperament fish. They come right up. They learn very quickly who feeds them. And this one was always really skittish. And about a week ago, I noticed that the barbs that were in there, the cherry barbs that I've got in there, were really harassing this fish. Every time it came out, the cherry barbs would just chase it right back into the hiding. And so I got it out, I moved it into this tank, and it's been thriving ever since I put it in here. And it's doing a great job helping me with my hair algae problem in here. I also added a bunch of little live bears, little Endler's guppy hybrids. Noticing this little red minor tetra down there. It looks like both of its eyes are sort of goggled out a little bit. It's not necessarily a very good sign. So the Siamese algae eaters, once they get in this tank, are going to make short work of what's going on with the algae in here, what's left of it. So as my rainbow fish population dwindles, I'm beginning to think about what I could do to this tank. I suggested possibly getting my little Crenocycla here, a mate. That is a female, and that is a Crenocycla regani. It is a dwarf pike cichlid, little South American pike cichlid. And I thought about getting her a mate, but as a lot of people pointed out, with cichlids, it's not that easy. And the way you really should do it, ideally, is get a group of juveniles, males and females, basically let them all grow up together, and when a couple have sort of made friends and paired off, you do something, I guess, with all the others. I've never really understood that part. That's where that process always falls apart for me. It's fine to do that, but what am I supposed to do with the other 6 fish I have now that those 2 have paired off, you know? I guess if you can take them back to your local pet store or wherever you got them or something like that, I don't know. But the idea is you get a group of them, you let them make their own decision and choose who they want to be with, and that's going to be your best bet in order to do it. So for me to put a male in with this fully mature female, these are dwarfs, so she's not going to get any bigger than that. I don't know if that would be such a good idea. Maybe put a couple of juvenile males in there, and then once again, when the one male gets larger, you know, if she picks one and you know, chases the other one, I can separate it. I've got other tanks. I wouldn't mind having another one of these. But in this case, it's the females that have that really striking pattern on the fin. I don't know if you notice that little kiss of red she has right there on her tail fin. It's red, black, and white. And then, of course, she's got those white and black markings on her dorsal fin that are just, you know, vibrant. They just pop when she stands her dorsal fin up. Really, really attractive fish. So the males are not so colorful. And, of course, they don't get that big, fat, full, round belly like she's got either. So not really that worried about getting the male for her. But it was a thought. It is something that crossed my mind. You can see my little rubber lip plecos up there. Those things are worth their weight in gold for algae control. But they don't really dig the hair algae. You need the live bearers. Gouramis will eat the hair algae. And I can't wait to get those Siamese algae eaters in there. They're going to make short work of that hair algae. So that's all I can think of. Not a lot else going on in this tank. So we'll move on and get back to my 125-gallon native tank. Not really much to speak of in this tank either. Really probably ought to get in here and do a water change. I know when I took all of those minnows out to the stream and got rid of them, it seemed like I was really reducing the bioload. But when I brought these sunfish back in, I brought more bioload into the tank than I took out of it. And I swear some of these some of these creek chubs have grown up into the size of the big ones. I took the biggest ones out, and now these medium-sized ones, I swear, in just this time, the short time, it's been a month or so, I swear they've grown into the size of those large ones. And then, of course, my white suckerfish right there is growing really large. And I don't know if you can tell how good these fish look, but I finally got these LEDs changed over too. I had the Cree 5000K LED over my office tank that was so bright, and it just had that really sort of blue, you know, that cool white color temperature to it, and I didn't like it, so I got the soft white version of it, and I hung that over my office tank, and so I was able to move 2 of those really good, high quality 90 plus CRI floodlights over this end of the tank. So if you'll remember before, I had spotlights, and you could see almost like beams of light shining down. There was two of them, and I gotta scratch my arm here. Hang on a second. If you're shaking around, that's why. There was two beams of light that shined down. It looked interesting, but it looked unnatural. And the quality of that light, it was like 80 CRI, so it was about the equivalent of shining some fluorescent light bulbs down in there. I've now got floodlights, so this whole area of the tank, this whole end of the tank now gets lit up, and they are positioned more to the back. You can see they're kind of dead center right here. But when the fish swim under them now, it's a much different story. It's a much, much higher quality color rendering. Of course, every time I get over here, the fish want to swim to the front of the tank because that's where they think I am, or that's where they think the food's going to start coming in. But some of these sunfish have actually started to get a little bit of their color back, and if we could ever get them down there under that light, you'd actually get to see some of those glints of blue and yellow and all that pretty color that are in those fish. This one, you can almost even see it up here in the shadows. Its lower jaw has all that really vibrant blue on it. It looks almost iridescent. And again, even in this sort of shadowy light that you're seeing it, you can tell how good it looks. But all in all, I'm not really digging the sunfish in here. I don't know. They're bigger than I wanted. They're not really doing what I was hoping. I was kind of hoping the minnows and the chubs and whatnot would sort of go into one school and the sunfish would be in another. And these all just sort of seem to have gone back into one giant school. The only fish I don't want to get rid of at this point is that shiner right there. He's starting to get those orange and black tips on his fins, and it's just really bulking out into a big, thick, full fish. And I bought that as a jumbo shiner from Clyde's Bait and Tackle a couple years ago for, I want to say, 50 cents. It was a jumbo shiner, maybe 75 cents. I don't know. I think their jumbo shiners are 50 cents a piece. But it's grown way, way bigger since I've gotten it, and I'm really, really happy with the way that looks for a minnow. It's a really, really cool looking fish. So, I don't know. We'll wait and see. As I always say, make sure you subscribe. You never know what it's going to be with me. Spur of the moment on a whim, I might just decide one day to do something different with this tank, and boom, by that afternoon, we'll have a completely different tank, and you just never know what it might turn into with me. It could be just about anything, so stay tuned and you'll find out. Not a lot to talk about with my snail tank. It was suggested that I could use that as a tank to breed my little guppy. I did get a little Dumbo guppy that's still in quarantine, and I thought about breeding it, and that's an option. I'd have to get in there and really do some serious water change, and I mean, you can see how deep and thick the mulm is on the bottom from how long it's been since I've actually gotten in there and done any real vacuuming it out or anything like that. So I would definitely have to get in there and clean it up before I started trying to breed fish in it. So we'll see. My Gudgeon tank here, I really need to get in there and thin the plants out. I've got so much of this water Sprite, it's not even funny, but I just don't know what to do with it all other than start throwing it away. I do sell it, as I've said. I sell a lot of it for a fairly low amount of money. You get a lot for your buck. So again, check my email down below if you're interested in any water Sprite. And this, of course, is the lace leaf water Sprite, and I will also tell you it is not guaranteed snail free, so be wary. You're going to get snails with your plants if you get plants from me, I'm sure. And that's one of the things I wanted to point out in this tank. I'm not really sure why the snail population has gotten so out of control, but I'm considering getting some kind of fish in here that would eat snails. The only problem is I've got that Gudgeon in here, wherever he is, and that Gudgeon is not a friendly fish. I actually had to get my Tbar out of this tank. I had my Tbar in here with that Gudgeon once upon a time, and even they did not get along. They fought with each other, and so I just don't know what to put in here. If it's smaller than the Gudgeon will eat it. And if it's bigger than the Gudgeon, he's still just going to fight with it. And I just don't want them, injuring each other or damaging each other. So I'm not really sure what I could put in there that would eat the snails, except possibly get an assassin snail. That's an option. I hadn't really thought about that. I do have an assassin snail in my wife's tank upstairs, but I don't have any in my tanks down here. So that gives you an idea what the lace leaf water Sprite looks like, growing up and out of the water a little bit. So, again, it's definitely time to get in there and remove some of that plants. Speaking of time to get in and remove some plants, let's have a look at my 125 here. What we can see through it. So that's my rainbow shark in there working its magic, eating the algae. This is my 125. This mass of water sprite is just so thick you could probably get in there and walk on it. If you moved your feet quickly enough, you could probably stay up on top of it. So it's all discombobulated like that because I was showing somebody what it looked like yesterday, and I reached in there with both hands and scooped up like a bucket full of it, and then I just dropped it back in the tank. So what I think I'm going to do is actually scoop up a bucket full of it and throw it in my native tank. My sunfish have been making short work of the little bit that was in there already, so I think putting some of that in there will just be a good solution. It'll be a way for them to get some free food, and it'll be a way for me to get rid of some water sprite, and it will be a way to soak up some nutrients in the tank while it's in there and living and doing its thing. You know, once it gets all munched up, you know, problem solved. I'll just convert it into fish waste, and it'll just get water changed on out of the tank, you know. So, not a lot to talk about in this tank, really. It's just, you know, again, it's just in need of some maintenance. The glass needs to get wiped down. I did a water change not that long ago, so it doesn't really, I'm not worried about it in that sense. The fish aren't in any danger of, like, bad water or anything. It's just so dark in there, you can barely see it, and that's just because of the amount of growth. I've got this Java Windalove, you know. I mean, that's actually not even the Java Windalove. This is some of that water sprite that's actually growing down from that end of the tank. It's just, it's monstrous. I've got so much of this stuff in there. And then this is all the Java Windalove. So that's just a huge mass of that. That blocks all of the light. So I really probably ought to thin some of that out. And then, of course, we get down to this end of the tank, and not only is all of my Java fern right there growing like crazy, you can see all of my Anubias, those big broadleaves there are Anubias. That's growing like crazy. And then I've got water sprite all the way down at this end of the tank. This has grown into the filter, has gotten stuck on it, the surface skimmer. So you can see all that. I mean, that's actually a frond that was growing up and out of the, it was growing up out of there. And then I've got all of that going on. So there is a lot of light being blocked from getting way down there in the bottom of the tank. And I really feel like I need to get in there with my garden tools, you know, or maybe my lawnmower or something, and start thinning out some of the plants in there. It's getting so dense and overgrown. So that might be tonight's project. I think maybe at the very least just yanking a handful of water sprite out of there will be, you know, something to get that pulled out and thrown into my native tank, and that'll be something to do for the evening. So my 20-gallon angelfish tank here, I put 6 of the white cloud mountain minnows in there. We're now down to 1. My angelfish is very fat and happy. So other than that, I haven't been feeding this tank a whole lot. I have been putting the algae wafers in there for the snails and for the clown Pleco I have. And of course, I've been putting enough flake food in there to keep everybody satiated. And I've been trying to keep enough flake food in there to keep this angelfish happy, but it does not seem to be working. I guess it's more of an instinctual thing. And at this point, rather than have just one little minnow swimming around in there by the rest, you know, the rest of its life by itself, I'd rather just let it be fish food at some point or not. We're just going to see what happens. I'm not really that worried about it, to tell you the truth. We'll just wait and see what happens. It's, you know, consider it a feeder fish maybe. So we've got the 2 little cherry barbs. Those are the females, and then somewhere in there is the single male cherry barb. I do not see it. There he is. Like I say, he usually lingers around down the bottom. So this is the one that was chasing my panda molly around to the point where I got her out of the tank. But you can see the tank really seems kind of sparse and empty at this point, and I need to get in there and do something different to it. I'm just not entirely sure what I'm going to do yet. I'm probably going to get a school of some kind of interesting tetras, like a diamond tetra or a lemon tetra. Those are the 2 that just sort of spring to mind when I think about them. I've always wanted both of those. But we'll see. There's so many different types of tetras out there that I could get something just, you know, I don't know. We'll see. So, again, make sure you're subscribed because you don't want to miss that. These are my Siamese algae eaters. So I got 4 of them in there. They're all 4 going to go into my 40 breeder that we were talking about. I've also got that little Dumbo guppy in here, which is down here. You can see that one on the far left. That yellow one is just a guppy Endler hybrid. So is that other one that just swam into view. But that little sort of blue and orange one up there that won't quite come into focus is my Dumbo guppy. So very soon I'm either going to move that into a breeding type situation, or I'm going to just go ahead and put it into the Waterfall tank, which is where it's destined to be eventually. That's what I got it for, was to go into that Waterfall tank. So fantastic little guppy. I'm really excited to see it in its home once it finally gets there. And I think we are going to look at the Waterfall tank tonight in this video. We're just going to go ahead and do it all and make it a long one. So let me turn this additional light on here in Butterbean's tank. Got a chair sitting in the way. Again, this is a very impromptu video. Don't know what to talk about really in here. I've run out of my freeze-dried krill, which is my normal food for Butterbean. So he's been getting nothing but snails for the last week or so. I have ordered more. I get tired of ordering those expensive small bottles, and the large bottle I ordered once again came from an outside vendor, a third-party vendor, and is going to take a week or 2 to get here. So I'm not sure when we'll be getting Butterbean back on his normal diet of freeze-dried krill. The shrimp, the snails that I put in there is probably what he gets 2, maybe 3 times a week. The freeze-dried krill is his staple diet. I put the full krill in there, the whole shrimp in there for him, and then I crumble and break some up for the mollies, and I have some bumblebee gobies in this tank that munch on the crumbled up freeze-dried krill as well. So he's looking pretty good. The little marks and spots on him still seem to be clearing up. So it's been quite a while since I've done a water change. If you'll remember, the last time I did a water change on this tank, I reduced the salinity a little bit. And I am seeing an improvement in growth. You see how much bright green growth we've got? That's all new growth that I was not getting before. So as long as I can keep the salinity high enough that the fish are healthy and happy, I'm going to lower the salinity as much as I can. And in fact, I might actually lower the salinity down, not to freshwater, but close to freshwater for maybe a week, and then bring it back up to just within that, edge of brackish. Maybe not even quite get to the level of being officially brackish water. Just get it close to being brackish water and leave it at that. And I think that'll be fine for Butterbean. And if it keeps all of those lesions off of his skin and allows me to grow some green plants in there, all the better, because that's what I'm really hoping for. My main goal really obviously is to get Butterbean all cleared up. You can see how those little bit of lesions are, well, if you're a regular viewer, you'll know he had those white marks and spots all over it. It looked like somebody was like scraping chunks of him or something out. I don't know, it's weird looking, but they're definitely less visible now and less of them. So I'm happy about that, and the only thing I've really done differently is reduce the salinity a little bit. So going to go with that and see what happens. So going to end up back here at the 29, except tonight we are going to stop right here in the center of the room, and we're going to have a look at the Waterfall tank. So we'll first get the overhead light turned on. This again is one of those very high quality, high color rendering Cree LEDs. It's a floodlight, and that is a 2700K. This is my very high power grow light that is powered by 2 Cree 3000K LEDs. And then this is the final light I keep on the tank, and this is another one of those 2700K floodlights, and that really lights up everybody down here. So this is where if I do this, everybody will come over, they'll think it's dinner time. This is where that little Dumbo guppy is going to go. This silver molly is the one I was thinking about putting over in with my panda molly. And then you can see I've already got some bright, beautiful guppies in this tank. And I'm thinking about just putting some more. Again, nothing, I don't know. Part of me says I should go to the store and find some really exotic guppies that would look amazing. And then part of me says, why not just go to the PetSmart and get some more of these fancy guppies and yellow guppies, because they look amazing too, and they're a few bucks a piece, and they're 15 minutes away. So I don't know, but I really do like the color I've got going on in this tank, and I'm even thinking about putting some of these or something similar, very bright splashes of color like this, in my office tank, which again is an open top tank and has a light exactly like that hanging over top of it. And again, it just makes those fish look fantastic, so it's worth the extra few dollars to get that good high quality light. As far as what's going on in the tank, not a lot. Just did a big water change again today because I had to spray for aphids again today. And you can see, even though that was hours ago, you can see aphids. And these look very healthy and alive, although that did drop off pretty easily. The skirt tetras love it when I drop the aphids in the tank. So they hit it pretty quick. So I did just spray for aphids, but you know, gonna have to just keep doing that forever. I think I'm never ever gonna get on top of them, no matter what I do. I do have some geraniums flowering. I believe those are geraniums. That's what I want to call them. My poinsettia is still growing and doing well. My lemon tree here is still doing well. This stuff right here is dead nettles. If you watched my yard tour video earlier, you'll have seen some of this out in its natural habitat, my backyard. Past the time of year for that to flower, so I think we kind of missed the flowering on that. You know, not really sure, but you can see my Christmas fern down there is growing in, doing pretty well. I've got some creeping Jenny back there that looks like it's starting to root in and grow. I'm really starting to get a good three-dimensional effect with all of the plants coming out towards us. I'm really digging that. My variegated sweet potato vine is starting to climb out. I'm trying to get it down here somewhere so it climbs out and then climbs back up. The purple sweet potato vine is growing dense and bushy, but it's not growing viney and leggy at all. But one of the things I'm most excited about is if we come over here and we look into the heart of my daylily, we've got flower spikes. So I'm really hoping that these are going to follow suit with the way all the vegetation is growing up and out, and the flower spikes are going to come out here, and you know, right there, boom, in front of that big bright LED, we're going to have a couple of, you know, 3, 4, 5 daylilies down here. Now these are just the roadside orange, as I like to think about them. They're very common orange daylilies, but you know what? It's in my basement and it's being grown out of a fish tank under an LED. They're going to look fantastic. You know, I don't care if they're roadside orange or not. When you take them off the roadside and you put them in this kind of situation, it makes them look all that much better. So that's about all I can think of to talk about this one. I probably ought to get in there and do a filter change. You can kind of tell the flow of the water has kind of trickled down. It's not really dripping out of there the way it was before. I do enjoy the way I get the flow of water coming down off of the vine, though. I've been getting a lot of interaction with that. And I've also been getting a lot of interaction with this plant, whatever this crazy thing is called. A lot of times these lower branches will come down and the water will run down them and drip off the leaves at the bottom, and eventually they get all kind of nasty looking and they fall down into the water and I have to cut them off. But you know, in the meantime, they look great. So there you go. I'm going to say thanks for watching. This is a long one, I know, but we had a lot to cover and we got all of the tanks done down here in the fish room. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget, this one here is my waterfall tank. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you real soon on the next one.